What you guys are about to see is probably one of the most mind-blowing conversations that I think I've been able to have the pleasure of having. I'm going to allow Yosef to kind of give, like an overview of how the conversation went, but it was with David Nandwa, of course. It was a lot in a very positive way. I have not seen something that made me lose words, and I have a lot of words, but it was a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, so we spent a bit of time talking with David Nandwa, founder
Mhm.
of Honeycoin, and I think it's one of the most underrated products on the continent so
100%.
far that gave us a bit of an insight into who they are, what problem that they're solving, got to demo the product itself and really get to play around with the B2B side of it, which is just incredible. It's very mind blowing in terms of bridging traditional finance
Yeah.
and banking rails for a lot of businesses and their customers with crypto assets and manage multiple treasuries and just transforming how we go about doing payments across Africa and beyond. So it's a very interesting insight into how to build products for this market and plugging it with the rest of the world. And David has been, very humble in sharing the ways they've built it and how they've gone about it. A lot of really good insights into just products and how to use stable coins in the current day and age, and also just not fighting banks, but actually creating superpowers that they don't have
Mm.
and leveraging them more is a very interesting insight.
What stood out for me is actually kind of what you said, that they're super underrated. Listening to him speak and getting to experience also our very first demo on the podcast, which is super, super exciting. Being able to see that. My first thought was, I don't understand why this isn't as big a deal for people as I feel like it should be. Because what they're solving for is absolute ease in a way that is both insanely underappreciated, but also the level of security that I think things like this provide for individuals to not have to. I think everybody has to deal with this, especially if you're navigating within the crypto space where you have like five different apps and you have to like move this thing, move the other thing, and do that thing, and have like five different bank accounts in different countries for you to be able to function, right? Especially if you're trying to travel a lot or do business with different other regions. But what Honeycoin is doing can essentially obliterate those obstacles. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen if they exert like a marketing push. Because I think the only thing that's missing here is people just have no idea what Honeycoin is. And if they come across it, they underestimate what it's about. So I'm super honored to be able for us to have this, platform to show a bit more about Honeycoin, and obviously all our other episodes moving forward will be about creating a space for founders and builders to share a bit more about what it is that they're doing, but also how they got there, because his story is interesting to hear. So I think in general, all of it was just very, very inspiring and humbling too, when you realize how much some people can do with such a small amount of resources. Can you imagine what happens if you just inject a whole bunch of that in there? I think we're gearing up to see a lot happening, not just for Honeycoin,
Yeah.
but for a lot of African builders as a whole. So I'm very excited. I think this was a fantastic conversation. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they haven't been making a ton of noise, but
Mm,
he mentioned that they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars of volume
yeah.
every
And he said
month
it so casually
of
too.
transaction. Yeah, and hundreds of thousands of users on
Yeah.
their retail product, which we didn't get to chat much about on this call, but hopefully we can do a follow-up and get to demo that side of it. But it's just incredible to be in a time where 20-something-year-old builders can
Yeah.
build a core function of what banks and Swift would do and create a much better, faster orchestration infrastructure for that to happen. And yeah, this was a really cool conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best way for us to share it is to just get straight into it. I don't think we can do justice to how the conversation was, so I will let you
Yeah.
guys to enjoy it for yourselves. Hello and welcome to the Borderless pod, where we discover a little bit more about the builders positioning us in the zeitgeist of technology and the borderless ideas that make on-chain the new frontier. If you're yet to do so, I suggest you follow Borderless AF on X or Twitter and on Farcaster, and subscribe to the newsletter at borderless.africa. On this particular episode, I am joined by Yosef, who will be co-hosting with me, and David Nandwa, who is the founder of Honeycoin, which is a software and tech company dedicated to building innovative tools for consumers and businesses. He is an experienced expert on payments and orchestrating the freedom of movement between fiat and crypto, which we all know there is an endless need for. So welcome to the show, David, and thank you for joining me, Yosef.
Thank you for having me. Super excited.
Good to have you here, David.
No, pleasure to be here as well. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah. Now, to start off, firstly, there's not much of you online, David. So I wonder if that is both one intentional, and if you could maybe give us a bit of a window into who you are and your journey into tech and the startup, just to share a bit of what we do know and what is available. We know that you were part of Magma 2, which was a fantastic experience from what I've heard, and that you
Yeah.
founded Honeycoin in 2020. So before that, you had a bunch of experience being, working as a full stack and software engineer, and then as a tech lead as well in multiple other companies at various stages. So can you just talk us through, your journey into getting into that tech world and the startup world as well?
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, it's unintentional, but I'm usually, I guess I'm more at home in front of a laptop coding than I am, like building a brand online and so on and so forth. But I'm trying to get good at both things because I think they're both as equally as important. But yeah, so of what is out there, all of the things you said are correct, right? So I was a part of Magma 2, which is, I mean, just incredible. And of course, Yosef and Song Yi have built something truly special with Magma, which was excited to kind of like participate in. Last year, started Honeycoin in, but in terms of like my background, my story as David, right? So I'll take you back a couple of years, actually. Maybe let me say 16, 17 years to be exact. So I started, my passion for technology actually started like at 9, 10 years old. So this is like the first time I was in front of a computer, and my dad is primarily in the IT space, right? So my background is I've seen grown up around technology, computers. He was, either working on some large scale printer that, printed out billboards, or he was like building out networking systems for different companies. And so I was always kind of like, had that front facing, let me just say like the front row seats, right, into tech. But ironically so, he's more on the hardware side of things. I found my love in software, right? And so around 9, 10 years old, that was the first time I actually sat down in front of a computer and wrote code, right? And this was because, so I was very big on gaming, still am. And I wanted to build a game. And so my priority was pretty much like, I want to build my own stuff as well. And so, started coding from an early age. Initially it was just like for fun. And so spent a lot of time and years doing this as like a passion, right? This led to me kind of like joining some of the earliest online communities. So this is before there was any AI coding tools. This was when Stack Overflow pretty much had like 10 pages and you're at the end of it, right? And so spend time now in the like very, like the earliest, let me say, some of the earliest forums such as Code Academy. And one thing that I would like to highlight is at around 12 years old, so I was one of the more active kind of like folks within the Code Academy community. And so wrote some of the earliest courses that folks were using at the time, like the JavaScript, Python, React, Angular courses, contributed both to the platform and was a moderator for like a really long time. And the reason that I fell in love with software engineering was just that, right? Like I think part of the ethos behind Honeycoin is the same ethos that I tracked back 12 years ago. It was permissionless and it was also credential-less, if that is a word, right? So it didn't matter whether you were 12 years old, sitting in Nairobi, or you were 40 years old sitting in San Francisco. You could get online, you could learn how to code, and you could start contributing to like this open internet. And for me, that's something that I think was extremely refreshing, especially coming from, sitting in Nairobi, in Kenya, sitting in Africa, where there is a lot of permission systems. There's a lot of access that is not only withheld, but that is controlled, right? Intentionally so, within so many different like spaces, right? And so fast forward a couple of years forward, 2014, 2015, this is when now I realized, oh, wow, you could actually get paid to do this, right? And so initially it was just like, oh, my folks, saw I'm spending 8 hours on a computer. They're telling the aunties and uncles, oh, my son can build your website or whatever, right? And this then led to me doing every which thing from personal websites to company websites. And it was fun at the time, but then I was like, no, this is not what I'm passionate about. Was fortunate enough to then move to Dar es Salaam to spend 3 years in Tanzania from 15 to around 17. This is where I joined a venture studio based out of Dar es Salaam. And I joined on because at the time I was working on some of like my own solutions. I was very interested in e-commerce, in payments, in consumer. And so I built out this kind of like e-commerce solution. Met with the CEO of a venture studio there called Jackal, and he was like super impressed. So he said, you know what, this is crazy, but I want you to come on board, help build some of the solutions that we're already kind of like deploying to existing companies. Because you know how venture studios work, right? Initially, you're building it for yourself, and then you're going to go ahead and kind of like then try to exit it as not as quickly as possible, but once it's commercially viable, it's generating revenue, and you then exit that kind of like business. And so I spent 3 years there. In that period of time, I launched an e-commerce platform, one of the first in Dar es Salaam. We scaled it to 6 figures in revenue, then exited it to like a logistics company based out of Dar es Salaam as well. Spend more time there, built solutions around legal, consumer, fintech, payments. And this is, by the way, when mobile money request was still processed with XAML. So not a lot of people know what XAML is, but it's basically pre-REST APIs. This is like when you are, I don't know how to explain it, but you basically were writing API requests in hypertext. And this is a lot of nerdy speak to say that. Imagine a world where it's not as easy to integrate with any kind of like payment system or solution. But it was still where I found my passion. It was still where I was like super kind of like interested in. And fortunate enough as well, around that same time, 2016, 17, to then get exposure in the Web3 space. So this is super, super early Ethereum. And was
And in Tanzania.
Yeah, this is in Tanzania. Yeah. This is right before I came back.
And was there much of a community there or a startup ecosystem?
Oh my goodness, no, none. Literally none. And when I say none, I mean not even anyone who was talking about what a blockchain was, what crypto was. And from a startup perspective, no startup ecosystem as well, right? You only had the very large companies. You either had telcos or you had banks. And outside of telcos and banks, you had law firms. And then outside of law firms, you had ex-Fortune 500 company that probably had one regional office in the market, right? So there's no startup ecosystem. And interestingly so, like I think at the time, I didn't even think what I was doing as, oh, this is a startup. This is what we're doing. It just felt like I'm in this venture studio. I'm doing what I love, which is kind of like writing code and seeing this deployed and it being kind of like used by customers and users. And it's only later on when now I realized, that was a startup. That's actually the startup culture that I'm living, experiencing as of today, right? And so fast forward around 2018, I come back to Nairobi, and at the time, this is like I've left Dar es Salaam, I left Tanzania. I'm back in Nairobi. I have enough dry powder not to be urgently looking for I need a job. I'm young. And also I left out a detail, but I finished my general education pretty early on. So like 14 years old, I was done. And that was because I did a different system than the national system, right? And so at the same time, in parallel, I'm finalizing my A levels. I'm thinking about doing uni. I'm still kind of like very much, I would say, in this entrepreneurial mood. I really, really want to focus on building as much as possible, right? Whether I'm at a company, whether I'm doing my own thing. And so fast forward a couple of months, was fortunate enough to then join Flutterwave. This was around 2019, 2020. I blurred the details, but it's within that range. Spent about a year and a half at Flutterwave. And I joined, so it was a contractual role, but I joined mainly because I knew, because of what I had seen in the crypto Web3 space, even before Web3 was a word, and in the fintech space, I wanted to start a company focused on financial services, but I didn't know what, right? And so I then said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to join the company that at the time I felt was doing the most to try and scale across the continent and in a way that was disruptive, and try to absorb as much as I can, right? So I joined as what at the time was called an integration specialist. So this was like a DevRel role. I was mainly interacting with customers, intentionally so. Like I wanted to understand what are the customer pain points. And then I was also working very closely with like the engineers, right? So also trying to relay, hey, what are we building? What are we focusing on? And how is this interfacing with customers?
And that was out of Nairobi.
Yeah, that was out of Nairobi. Yeah.
So were you working remotely with
It was
Flutterwave, or did
remote
they have
at
an
the time.
actual?
Flutterwave didn't actually have a physical office. So it was
Right.
primarily remote, hybrid, co-working, that kind of dynamic, right? And most of their team was based out of Nigeria at the time as well. And so then, yeah, I absorbed as much as I could, did as much as I could there. Then was crazy enough. This is now entering 2020 was crazy enough when the world is locking down to be yeah, this is the perfect time. I'm going to launch a fintech, which in hindsight seems insane. But I think that global reset was, to me, the sign to be hey, there's no better time than any. You've done all of these other things. You've launched your own products. You've worked at companies. You've done all of this kind of things, but it's not time to start something with no support system. You're not working for any different organization. This is just you solo founded and you're building out the solution. And so Honeycoin then gave birth to Honeycoin. October 29th, 2020 is when we officially incorporated, but I started working on it around May of that year, right? So this is
Right.
a couple 2 months before it was launched. And that is a not so small nutshell of who David Nandwa, the person you're speaking to today, has gotten up until this point.
What a story. Thanks for walking us through it. And to be able to build a startup in Dar es Salaam when there wasn't a community there, and scale it and then sell it. And then, it's very smart of you to think about joining a Flutterwave in order to learn about fintech and position yourself really well to build something in that space. But one thing I'm curious about, David, is you had been exposed to crypto earlier on, and what gave you that conviction that around 2020 was the right time to build something? I remember that was when a lot of startups were coming up, and there were a lot of copycats of what were being built and being funded globally that were being developed in Africa, and they all kind of died out a few years later. What was your thinking process at that point in terms of what to build and what problems to solve?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for me, the things that I needed to be true to be okay, this is a perfect time is when you look at the two largest ecosystems. In fact, now the second largest, Ethereum, which has pretty much swallowed up the other smaller ecosystems. So most chains are now built EVM compatible for a reason, right? Ethereum built the programmable internet layer where other people now started to launch different apps and then different chains based on that kind of underlying protocol. If you go back to early days Ethereum, we're talking 2017, around there, this was when there was not a lot of stability. So it was a technology that I knew existed, knew Bitcoin existed also as well. But then you have a lot of different events, verse events, such as the Ethereum hard fork that created ETC, the fact that the Ethereum gas fees was still $200, $300. I actually fondly remember, I think it was Patrick Collison who was saying when Stripe launched, they launched with Bitcoin and Ethereum payments. And then all of the merchants told them, we're not going to use you if you're going to do this because you're settling me, $1,000 for collections, and then you charge me $300 in gas fees. It just doesn't make sense, right? Now, if you track back 2019, 2020, this is actually when Ethereum started to position themselves as a layer 2 solution, build kind of roll-ups. There's the very early days, there was no zero knowledge, but then fees were becoming better. Each hard fork, fee reductions were happening. Polygon, around that same time, was when they were also starting to get their footing within the market. Interestingly so, the chains that we prioritized was Celo, Polygon, and Stellar. Now, this was very intentional because I had been in close communication with the Stellar team even before I launched Honeycoin, and then also speaking a lot to the Stellar team and what their mission was. And one of the primary missions was Ethereum is still broken, fees are very expensive, and most of the growth needs to happen within emerging markets. Both of those two blockchains had that alignment, and to me was yeah, 100% that's a no-brainer. And there's nothing that's going to happen when M-Pesa is as cheap as it is and it costs me $100 to send $100, right? So I'm sending zero. Ironically, not ironically, but interestingly, that basically led to both Stellar and the founders of Celo being now investors in Honeycoin because they were okay, you get it. And it's definitely perfect timing. So we want you guys to be one of the folks who are building these early blockchain solutions. And so I would say, in a nutshell, it's that if you track back post pre 2020, there was none of the things that needed to be true for this to be a solution that can actually be launched on a continent like Africa, in an emerging market like ours. Around that time is when now we're seeing like this scaling order effects that now make it possible for a builder like myself to say, I'm going to take this technology, I'm going to try to link it to like the existing problems that a lot of the folks that I want to serve are facing.
Amazing. Super exciting that it started off with that. And I'd love to dig into the stellar and cello angle, because not many people know globally how much those chains have been actually investing a lot in Africa and playing a very strategic role in the space. But tell us, what is Honeycoin? What is it doing? Tell us about the products that you have, the numbers of users and volumes you guys are processing.
Sure, 100%. In fact, my favorite question. And I've answered it more times than I can even count now. But the best way I like to describe what Honeycoin is today is we are building the operating system for money to be moved, spent, and transferred. And we're doing this for consumers and businesses. Similar to how Apple provides iOS, which is the operating system for the mobile phone in their ecosystem, we are trying to build that, but for money. And not just money on the continent, but for money globally. Because historically, this has only been primarily developed in Western markets, in more developed economies. And Africa, emerging markets have consistently gotten the leftovers of such solutions. Now, how we do that is we use blockchain technology and stablecoins to help expedite money movement, build alternative settlement systems, and then also give our customers more autonomy with how like their customers themselves and then their own internal treasury teams kind of like manage their assets, their balance sheet, their payments, and so on and so forth. The second layer is we then now build the piping to connect local payment rails, local banking infrastructure, and bring that on-chain. Why it's important to bring it on-chain is you're talking about closed private ledgers now coming into an ecosystem of an open economy, an open internet, right, from a financial perspective. And when you bring that on-chain, that basically then means that David in Nairobi can be sending and receiving money to Joseph in Ethiopia, or a friend in San Francisco, or in Paris, or in Lagos, and so on and so forth. You eliminate the borders by doing that. I started the company because the existing solutions were trying to build on a broken table. So if I had a table today and I tried to eat on it and it was missing one leg, anytime I lean on the place where the leg is missing, it falls down. Now, that's what a lot of like the early fintech solutions were doing. I was connecting to a local payment service provider or a local bank. And if the bank has downtime or the PSP has downtime, then I have downtime, right? And so I'm not actually solving the solution. What I am is I'm wrapping it in a really nice UI, I'm packaging it, and I'm selling it to my customer. And I hope that they don't realize it's the same thing that they've been using all along, right? Now, for us, we said, no, we're going to rethink and reimagine what this infrastructure looks like. Yes, we will still need the local connections, but how can we build resiliency using this kind of like new technology, such as blockchain, stablecoins, machine learning, AI, and the works. Now, in terms of our scale, it's just incredible. I always think about what we've been able to achieve in such a short period of time, and it's always truly humbling. So over the last 4 years, we are now one of the largest institutional blockchain-based players on the continent. We process hundreds of millions of dollars every single month. And we have over 200,000 plus consumer customers, like on Peer, which is our B2C facing platform, and now serving hundreds of businesses, from banks to financial institutions to payment service providers, all in the span of these 4 years, with a B2B platform that just launched in 2023. We're now live in 40 plus markets. We're licensed in 6 of those and have now regional partnerships and approval that allow us to operate in these particular different markets. And I think the reason it's both humbling and also, I guess, scary is, having done all of this, I think it begs the question, will we be able to carry this on into the future? But I think that's what makes the vision and the mission here at Honeycoin just so powerful for us who are building this company, because I think all of those things being true, our traction, the reason why we fund the company, and then how we're deploying these products is really what fuels us to keep going.
Yeah. Just to make sure I understand correctly, basically saying that the traditional payment rails, they work in the local ecosystems, but they have a lot of friction points in how they move. And
Correct.
what you've created is not reinventing the entire stack from scratch, but
Yes.
created superpowers that those players don't have, and then plug directly into the local banks, local mobile money channels, and leverage blockchains and stablecoins to be able to do things that they're supposed to do, but a lot better and faster by
Correct.
actually leveraging them. So you're not trying to replace banks
No.
and institutions. You're adding a layer that they don't have that gives you speed and scale and agility in order to do it. Is that a kind of a correct way to kind of put it together?
That's a very good assumption. And I think the only thing I would add to that is not only are we doing it on that banking layer, but then now, once we've done that and achieved that, we're putting it in the hand of customers, whether you're a corporate customer, whether you're a consumer, and telling you that it's the exact same things that you're used to, or rather packaged in the exact same way, but with all of these additional benefits based on how we've kind of like built and deployed this technology, right? The same thing as saying, I could give you a Safaricom SIM card and an MTN one, and maybe you prefer an Airalo eSIM. All of them are SIM cards, right? But there's only one that you don't need to go to a physical agent to get. You don't need to be able to register manually and so on and so forth. We are that kind of like solution, but from like a financial and a payments perspective and a banking perspective.
I can't help but wondering that, from a person who was just kind of has been curious for many years about just technology and figuring out how to make it work and building, some really cool, exciting stuff. Building with crypto can get a bit frustrating, at least from, what I've seen. How do you manage to kind of keep yourself still curious enough to keep going and keep, iterating and building beyond just what you currently have now, but also with the business mindset of making sure to keep that stability, and that consistency that people are looking for when they look towards a crypto product, whether you're a business or a consumer? How do you keep that balance between, keeping your curiosity alive and trying new stuff, but also with the everyday stuff as well?
I think the thing that just came to my mind when you asked it is there's a very famous interview with Kobe Bryant, and the interviewer is asking him, "You've already won the championship, but this time you lost. How do you keep going? What motivates you?" And he just gave a very simple answer: the job's not finished. And it's the same thing on our side. Like, if the job's not finished, we show up every single day because we have not met on the promise that we gave to our customers. Even if we never sat down with each one of them and gave it to them, if the job's not finished, we have to keep going. And we have to kind of like at least continue until we see the world that we actually previously saw only in our minds tangible, right? And we're seeing glimpses of that now. You go on Twitter right now, you go on LinkedIn, the next fifth post will be stable coins, blockchain technology, AI, right? I think now we are seeing glimpses of what that future could look like based on what we've built. But every time we've had to turn off one partner, turn on another one, integrate over 3 months and find out it doesn't work out. And to just say, okay, you know what, let's look at this other existing solution, is because the job's not finished, right? I think, and I say this both as an African and as a builder, if the motivation, if the reason, the why is not much bigger than yourself, so easy to quit and stop going. I think it was Mark Andreessen who said, you can probably find the number of startups launched, which is directly correlative with the S&P 500. So when the S&P 500 is very high, many people are going to be like, this is a perfect time. Or even a Bitcoin price, it's very correlative with that as well. When that's really high, you find so many people launching different solutions and saying, this is time to build. We're so back. This is happening now. And then when everything dies down, signal to noise now is like at a minimum. You have the people who now truly are doing this because they care about the world they're living in now and the world they want to create because of how things exist today. And so the TLDR basic answer is, one, the job's not finished. And to anyone who would watch this and is an African builder, is just an entrepreneur or someone who cares about problem solving, I would just urge you to build outside of yourself and focus on a problem until the job is finished.
What does it look like when the job is done? And who determines that? Is it the user? And if it's the user, which one?
Yeah.
Is it, the businesses and how they're able to get their ease of movement and their businesses moving forward? Or is it, the individual consumer who's then able to have that freedom of movement between whatever forms of money it is that they wish to move it around? So how do you determine that pinnacle moment where you can say
The
the
job.
job is done and the people are satisfied and I've done what I came to do?
I think the way I would answer that, the best way I can answer that question is today, no one ever, if they have an internet connection and the latest version of the app installed, you never wonder if your WhatsApp message got delivered or not, or your iMessage message got delivered or not. The day that we are so invisible that customers just know it'll work, and I know I can collect payments from this jurisdiction, I can send money here, I can move this, I can do that, I can open a bank account without having to fill in 500 forms. And they do it without thinking. I do it because, wow, this company is amazing. Anytime I'm on WhatsApp, I don't even care about Meta or engineers at Meta because it just works. And I think the day we are that, the day we are as ubiquitous as a stop sign that you never care about, but there's someone who thought about building that and they patented it and now we use it everywhere in the world, that will be when the job, I think, will be finished. Until we get there, then until there's like, a question on whether the rate is right, a question on whether the money will get delivered, a question on whether it will take long or not. I think if we are still here, the job is not done. But once we're invisible, then now we've pretty much are 99% where we should be to say this is something, this is a technology that and the solution that we sought out to kind of like build. And I think that would be the same both on a B2B level and also for consumers.
Can you tell us a bit more about these types of people and these types of entities that you're serving? Who exactly are these people? Is it just kind of everyone? Is it anyone from Lesotho, Kenya, California? Or is it specific, regions and specific types of people as well that you're able to serve here?
So I'll give like maybe some archetypes of different customers that we have on board today and why that is, right? So one of our like newer customers is Cellulant, for example. Cellulant are a licensed payment service provider. You might ask, why do they need a company like Honeycoin? They're in payments, they're in banking, this is what they do. One of the things that we do for payment service providers is we help take out the pain from like management and then also make FX for them transparent and better. So those are a lot of buzzwords to say two things. Number one, we give more liquidity in markets that need it so that these folks can focus on their main thing, which is I help you collect payments and I help you disperse them as a payment service provider. Then the second thing is we then give them superpowers to say that I'm in Kenya today, but if I got a license in Zambia tomorrow, I can trust that Honeycoin already has the piping for me to launch in that market and have FX, banking, and payments fully tied in. So it's like, not only am I your launch pad, but I am also the piping, your liquidity that helps move the water from point A to point B. Now, the second kind of like archetype is any consumer-facing company that's serving millions of consumers. One of those customers is Gigi, for example. Now, we work with Gigi to help them with two things. We help them to reach their customers at the last mile. This can be through like our payment service provider infrastructure, or banking infrastructure in our network. And then also we help them to move all the revenue that they collect back into their holding companies in a way that's tax compliant and a much more efficient than like the adjacent solution. So I'll give you a scenario, and this is a case study from an actual customer. It typically used to take them 5 payment service providers to basically collect payments in 5 markets. And then it used to take them 7 days to receive the same money once they've collected it. Because when you've collected it, you're going to speak to provider A, B, C, and D. They're going to tell you, okay, we'll convert it today. It'll take 24 hours. The other one will say 48. Then you're sending all that money via Swift, right? Very painful process, very arduous in its entirety. For you to realize the revenue you collected 7 days ago, enter in Honeycoin, you have that instant piping for you to be able to collect payments from your customers. And then you have an instant settlement engine, meaning you've taken Swift settlement times down from 7 days to 7 hours. And that's a game changer for a business that is actually relying on revenue that they're collecting to fund marketing costs, to fund our user acquisition costs, to kind of like pay out suppliers and all of these kind of like different things and use cases that they have. And so for us, that is a success story that we are super proud of, because it's like we are now taking all that pain away, taking it on ourselves, right? Not in a noble way, but we still get paid, right? We have a revenue model, but in a way where we actually are a solution to this business. So much so that it's not like a question on whether or not this large institution can come in and just serve them. they have to understand all of the different nuances for them to be able to kind of like service this customer, right? And so those are like top two use cases. The other kind of like different markets are like remittance companies and banks. And for these types of customers, we are mainly just like are a partner from like infrastructure perspective, and then also from like an FX and payments perspective to just help them either serve their customers better at a cheaper and more cost-effective rate.
The 7-day wait is such a long one. That is
Yeah.
just crazy for a business to be able to function that way. And I know different types of cross-border payments take a long time. And why is it like that?
Yeah.
Like, what's your view of why that problem is the way it is?
The things that we found were in some ways shocking. And the first reason I'll tell you why is because it's profitable that it's this way, right? So why is it profitable for money to take long to be moved? Why is it profitable for, efficiencies to not be in place? And I'll tell you, it's because I wouldn't name any banks, but it's because any financial institution or bank cares about capital more than anything, right? They care about more of their treasury position more than anything. And so if I am just a pipe where you're moving between me, money never sits, lands, or stays with me, then I never make money. I never monetize, right? It's actually an interesting thing when you dig into also how money works. The Federal Reserve cares more that banks are buying bonds than they care that banks are lending to their customers. Because if banks have a liability to the Federal Reserve, then that means that they will always need to make sure they're retaining customer deposits longer and longer. And not by design, but by circumstance, we are now in a world that exists where the businesses that are in charge of money efficiency, meaning movement, settlements, payments, are those that want to retain and absorb capital and make sure that they're monetizing that capital, right? It's a byproduct of why a company like Stripe, who I actually respect very deeply, was able to scale so quickly. When they went and tried to say, we want to help a business accept a payment, they were giving like 12-page forms, right? The bank gives a 12-page form, asks for your mother's maiden name and your blood type, just for you to be able to accept payments for your mom and pop stop. And so for us, when we realized that the systems exist in this way because number one, they're profitable. The second thing is also there's always someone expecting X person will pick up like the slack, right? So it's more of like, let me say, an offsetting thing that's happening. And I'll give an example of how one of the largest clearance networks works, Swift. Swift works because it's a network of correspondent banks. And so what they're basically saying is, I as Bank A trust you as Bank to make sure that this money gets to the customer. Bank A and B do not know what employees they have, what technology they're running on, what systems they have in place to make sure it does that. They just say, when I send you this message, I hope that it gets to the right beneficiary. This is also why there's a lot of delays in emerging markets and not so much in developed ones. Because a Citibank has had years of being part of the SWIFT network to improve their systems, to build the piping so that money from the UK to Europe can move very quickly. Now, a microfinance bank that just recently got licensed is not even part of the SWIFT network, not even accredited by Visa and MasterCard. This is them starting, will never be expected to actually catch up to so-and-so banks and so-and-so partners. And then also because their motivations for why they're a bank are not for efficiency, and they're not for processing. They're for banking, they're for lending, right? And so the Honeycoins and, the Stripes, we exist today because the person who we're expecting to pick up the slack is not in any way incentivized to do it. And a lot of the other kind of like players within the space are also still expecting this guy will probably do it, right? And so it's the two things that I mentioned, right? Incentives are misaligned, and then also the motivations are completely different. Not motivations, actually. The implications of solving the problem are always pushed to the other guy. It's not me who's supposed to solve it, it's X person. And those two things now coming together create a very interesting problem where everyone is trying to serve their own interests. No one is trying to say, if I serve everyone's interest and I layer on a fee on it, then I'll make money and everyone's happy, right? And I think that's how the best companies are built.
I have never heard the part about incentives articulated in that way, specifically with the traditional institutions. Because one assumption, at least I've always had, is that as a financial institution, you make money from velocity of movement. if you're a fee-based business, right? So the more money flows, the more fee structures you can actually leverage to do so.
Yeah.
But the added element of the reserve with the central banks that you have and kind of needing to maintain a certain amount, like that being a much bigger incentive than facilitating a much higher velocity of movement.
No, it's massive because if you look at, feel free to dig into this yourself, Access Bank is now in SA as well, largest bank by capital base. Access Bank makes billions in Naira just on Forex reserve profits. They don't even have to liquidate it. They just make it because anytime the central bank would say, we are now floating X government bond, they will happily buy it at the price that they floated it, because what you are doing is you're buying capital at a fixed price. Everyone else in the market who's moving and sending and receiving and collecting, dispersing payments will still come to you, and so you'll always be buying it at a discount. It's almost as if your capital cost is always going to be lower, and so you don't want to be the one moving or making things efficient. You want to be the one who's sitting and you're just at peace, similar to how a BlackRock doesn't track the S&P 500 because they are the largest asset manager by asset base, right? So all they care is as long as it's net positive in the long run, all of these smaller firms can do the derivatives trading, algorithmic, everything they want to do. For us, it's just one line up or down, and we make sure to protect our interests. So it's such an interesting problem, but something that is definitely worth looking into. And not a lot of people care about it as well. I think when you're in fintech, and in crypto, it is worth caring about.
You mentioned you're doing $100 million plus volume a month. Is that correct? And that's just on the B2B side?
That's B2B alone. Interestingly, the consumer business is much smaller, but it's not really a labor of love, but it's has both a close place in my heart, but at scale, it makes a lot more sense. So on the consumer side, we're doing now on average $2, $3, $5 million a month as well. So it's about less than 2% of the B2B business.
That's amazing. And these are all payments you're facilitating for businesses and retail users.
Correct.
Those are
Cross-border
insane
or
numbers.
mostly local?
So yeah, it's actually a portion of both, right? So a lot of our volume is ex-border volume, and because we're kind of like this now alternative settlement / payment layer, but then we do now have a significant amount of this kind of like volume coming from just local markets, right? So 10-15% and growing just from like that local piping, the local infrastructure that we're kind of like talking about, which is exciting to me because I think at scale we need both, and so they feed into each other in a really interesting way. And so we want to kind of like, of course, keep making treasury and money movement and just in general global infrastructure more efficient, but then we also really care about how we're building this kind of like local piping, local solutions which still have a blockchain based play, right? So most people think you only need a blockchain if it's ex border or if you need to send money from one jurisdiction to another. The interesting thing is most ledgers locally are broken, and so we're actually then trying to embed a lot of like the kind of like blockchain efficiencies that we're having on an exporter level, bring it to a local context, which will then also start to open up like even more exciting and interesting things like local stable coins, which is something that I am super passionate and excited about.
Yeah. Can we actually see the product itself, at least for the B2B side, and see how it works?
Yep, we can. So every business that uses Honeycoin will interact with one of two things: our API documentation and this B2B like dashboard. And you can see here like the dashboard is broken out into like a couple of different sections, right? So you have this overview screen where someone can be able to like see, oh, this is like my current balance and what assets I'm holding, both crypto and fiat. Like, so you can see I'm pretty much only in stables from like a crypto perspective, and then I'm holding more cash than anything from like a fiat perspective.
Wait a minute. So this is an interface where you can actually hold fiat assets and
as well
crypto
as
assets
crypto
exactly
assets.
on the same application.
Exactly. Yeah. And in a way that feels as if all you're holding is assets, because really that's what they are, right? You're just holding currencies. And so we try as much and have done like a good job at making it feel that way, right? So whether I'm sending stable coins, whether I'm dealing with like, actual fiat, the exact same experience and very, very ubiquitous.
Wow. How is this possible just on this part?
Yeah.
Because
So
are you custodying my fiat assets when I'm storing it there? How are you structuring it? And how does the crypto element work as well?
So we basically have a hybrid custody solution, right? So it's not self-custody, it's multi-signature custody, which basically means that you are in control of your assets as a business, as a corporate, but then we also help to secure your assets, right? As the platform, right? But then our custody is fully on you. Like every single customer, when they sign up on a platform and you have like a Honeycoin account, you basically get your own dedicated wallet, right? So we issue a new wallet to you and you're able to kind of like use that for sending, receiving, ramping, and so on and so forth. Now, the thing that makes this possible is we've built a lot of that piping internally ourselves, right? So we're running a bunch of like RPC URLs ourselves. The blockchain infrastructure is a mix of like connecting to some of like the more well-known and global node providers like an Infura and so on and so forth. And then on top of like, kind of like connecting to these nodes, all of the broadcasting, transaction creation, swap infrastructure, that's all built in-house and proprietary so that we can make it as ubiquitous as possible. Because anything we offload to a partner means we don't have control. I can't tailor make the experience to our customers. And then on the fiat end, we built like now our own proprietary ledger. So it's basically your very standard banking double book accounting ledger. And we do have banking as in accounts, but this is now just a banking ledger that allows you to now credit your account with different like fiat currencies and be able to like use those fiat currencies in different markets, different jurisdictions as well.
And the fiat is stored with a bank.
Yes, fiat is stored with a bank. It's insured. FDIC insurance in the US, and then any kind of like deposit insurance company in the local jurisdictions, right? So secure custody and then fully kind of like integrated into like the platform as well. So you have instant liquidity at any point in time.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. And so virtual accounts is a really nice segue into banking. Now, when we're talking about banking, banking is very much so like your traditional, I have a bank account with X institution. And so this basically means that you, as a business that's operating in market like Kenya, you're in the US, you're in Tanzania, you're in Nigeria, can come onto a platform and say, I want to open an account with Honeycoin. When you're saying you're going to open an account with Honeycoin, you would be opening an account with any of our sponsor banks, right? And so I'll come in here into a sub account. So this is one of our local entities. It's a KS virtual account. And as you can see, this is an account that we use for like local collections, one of, right, internally, when we are kind of like offering a white label ledger solution. And as you can see, if I came in here to top up, I would basically see my banking details. It's the same kind of like account name. It's the same kind of like bank. I can receive international wires, so Swift payments here. I can receive mobile money payments here. I can receive pay bill payments here, all in like kind of like one integrated platform. And the reason this is really cool is it's the same experience across the board. Whether you were like opening an account in the US and you wanted to receive USD payments, or you are opening an account in Kenya and you're kind of like collecting and receiving KS denominated payments, right? And the thing about this that makes it so sweet is it also ties in very, very well into like our minting platform. This is basically, you can think about it as an instant bank to stable coin liquidity platform for anyone who's a Honeycoin customer. You can basically come in here, say that you want to go from like fiat into a stable coin, and I can basically say, I'm sitting in Kenya and I want USDC, right? Then why this is really cool is the minting platform is built into the account. So when I say that, what I essentially mean is I, as a business, do not have to open an account with a different institution to be able to like mint liquidity. I can then go from like US dollars into USDC. And as you can see here, like we then have two ways, right? So we have our ledger solution, we have the account solution, where we basically have a direct debit capability we've built into the account so that you don't have to actually, as a business, have send a manual wire to be able to get access to a stablecoin, right? You can just basically do it one asset to another on the platform, and we can kind of like handle every single thing, right? Now, I won't spend too much time on invoicing, but invoicing is also really cool. You can think about invoicing as like payment links, but it's very much purpose built for your corporate, your import export company. And we have like a really nice tool here where you can both build the invoice and then be able to send it out once you've kind of like previewed it. So imagine I'm a business and I want to add like everything. So let me add my address and say that I'm going to, so this is me. This is a retriever here because I have a retriever. And I'll just add some dummy details here just for the sake of like showing how this works. And as you can see here, I have now a bunch of different like assets. Now, the really cool thing about the way the assets work here is I can invoice in all of these different currencies, but I can also say where I want to get settled. So you can see I have USDC as an asset. I can invoice in USDC, but receive that payment into KES. And because Honeycoin is managing the price oracles, everything about this, you kind of like don't have to actually focus on FX. What am I getting? And so like right here, you can see like I can set receiving wallet, right? So if I said, for example, I want to invoice in Kenya shillings and I'm selling one bag of apples for 100 and there's no percentage or anything. Once I send this, if I send it in USDC, the customer will be able to then pay in USDC and then you receive the funds on the other end, right? And then
And
you
the other way around.
Yeah, and the other way around. So it's basically, think about it as an omni-channel solution, not just tied to invoices.
So you have an application where you can manage crypto assets through a multi-sig and fiat assets through virtual accounts.
Yes, and virtual accounts.
And then you can mint stable coins with fiat assets and vice versa.
Without having to send them. So it's just an instant direct debit into stables.
And you can be a company anywhere in Africa and you can basically issue an account in different currencies in jurisdictions outside of Africa, including the US, UK.
Correct. US, EU, UK, Nigeria, Tanzania as well.
Got it. And you can then issue invoices in all those currencies and then settle it in whatever currency makes sense to you.
That you want. Yeah. So
this is like a financing pool that orchestrates what Zero, the accounting software, does, what like stablecoin on and off ramp, and what a custody service like treasury management does altogether.
Now you see why I said operating system. So it's like we wanted to build that as an OS. So it's like very programmable, very customizable to like each customer's actual use case, because the use case is the most important thing. If we're not kind of like purpose making this to one particular, like if we purpose build this for one particular customer, then we miss out on the point that the entire kind of like base level infrastructure is broken. So we wanted to now be that base level. And then all of these exciting use cases come out of this kind of like platform.
Right. And if you're a customer here, let's say doing import export.
Yeah.
Do you need to have a bank account outside of this?
No, now that's the really cool thing, right? So we have Cedar, which is like a very large import export customer of ours. They are registered outside of Africa, but we're able to build and offer the solution not only to them, but their merchants, because another thing that we've kind of like also deeply thought about is tax compliance. What do you need as a global business to offer a local solution in tandem with a partner? Now, we realized that a lot of the things that they needed was just to make sure that, does my partner have, banking relationship and payment service provider relationship? Or do they have a PSSP license? Do they have a money transmitter license? All of those things will be achieved for them, right? And so if you're a large import export customer, the short answer is you do not need to have a local entity. Neither do you need to have local rails and local partnerships to use Honeycoin. We have built this in a way that we can help you remain tax compliant while still being able to offer your customers this kind of like solution in whatever jurisdiction they're in.
Amazing.
Sorry, but this is insane, because how do you achieve all of this without getting tangled in the bureaucracy and the legal stuff and the technical wires of not getting things crossed, because there is so much happening, but to the end user, there is absolute ease, like you can see what you're doing. It just looks as clear as day, but this is a lot. I'm just trying to understand, how do you achieve all of this without, getting caught in any quagmire in the middle?
It's a really good question. I think like for us, one of the things that's been super important as we've continued to scale has been, and I think a lot of startups fall into this trap, is first principles thinking, right? Like there's a lot of things we could have built, and there's a lot of things that this kind of like infrastructure powers. But for us, the first principles thinking was, what is the main thing that we want to do? Operating system for money to move, be spent, collected, dispersed. What does that need to look like for businesses? They need collections, disbursements, banking, payments, and they also need stable coins. We know that's important because there's a lot of friction with traditional like infrastructure and banking. Now, the thing that I cannot really say how we're able to do it is we are such a small team, right? So we are only 15 full-time. Yes, the team is growing right now. We expect to bring on 3 folks. 4 engineers have been working on this for the last 4 years. I cannot tell you how we've been able to do that apart from that we deeply, deeply care about making sure that not just our efforts, but our prioritization goes a long way. And I think that's, it's a lesson for everyone. And we're seeing it now with AI. Like a lot of companies are saying, we probably didn't need a 10-person headcount to manage our front end. We probably needed a 5, right? I think for us, we've tried to do that from the get-go, because when you think from a product perspective in the first principles, I think you have to then try and extend that over to how you deploy the solution as a team. And so those things coming together is, I think, the most important thing. That's like our secret sauce, which is easier said than done for sure.
You built all of this with 15 people.
Yes, 15
That's
people.
mad.
Can you imagine that?
That's amazing.
What do you guys eat?
That's amazing. Less is more.
There's something in the water. Yeah, we're drinking here on
Has
this
to
side of
be.
the equator.
Yeah, this is
Less
extremely
is more.
impressive.
Very true, though. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
How does the API part work?
My favorite parts. So I think to show the API, let me just show one call, which would be a very simple call on how a particular customer is able to like accept payments using us. So before I even make this call, what you're seeing here is our API infrastructure. Now, one of the things, as I was talking about, like the way that we've approached kind of like problem solving and like building out a solution, is developer experience, not just customer experience, but DevX, because we want engineers, other builders to come to a platform like ours and be like, wow, I want to use this. And so even before I dig into the API reference and like the nitty gritty of like, this is how to call a solution that we power, I'm just going to quickly copy this and I'm going to go and show you one of the reasons customers really like us. So what you're seeing is our recipe section. And one thing that you'll notice is we basically have purpose built our recipe section for every specific use case, and not all, but many of the specific uses that are possible with the infrastructure. So you're seeing here how to collect M-Pesa payments from your customers. It's a recipe on like how and exactly step by step code examples, what you need to do, what endpoint to call once you've initiated it. What does that look like? If you went on Daraja, which is Safaricom's official, no shade to them, and tried to see how to collect M-Pesa payments, you would probably be starting from, I need to, first of all, figure out how to decrypt this puzzle, then I'll be able to accept payments, right? And for us, we really wanted to demystify that. And so even outside of collections, you can see like it goes as deep as, okay, this is collections, but how do you actually then interact with the different banks that we support? How do you get transaction details? How do you generate dev tokens for you to be able to kind of like receive and accept payments? All of these things were super crucial. How to pay out to customers as well, right? So you come in here and see, exactly what you need to do step by step up until the point where you're dispersing that transaction. And for us, it's like that experience is what we wanted from our customers, because the thing I always tell my team is when you deploy a solution, you never want someone reading the manual, even if you include it, right? The best products out of the box, you never read the manual. You just know how it works. I've never seen someone read the 20-page manual that comes with an iPhone. And that's because they know they turn it on, they put in their PIN, they save it, they log in the Apple ID, they're using the phone. It's the exact same thing, right? And so now once you're a developer, for example, coming in and you want to use our infrastructure, now you have all of these different endpoints for like crypto, cards, minting, virtual accounts, as you can see, collections, payouts. And very quickly, I'll just show like how easy it is if I'm a developer coming in and saying, I wanted to kind of like allow my customers to collect payments. Let me not even use Kenya. I'll use like Rwanda, right? So somewhere where I've never lived, I've never been, but we have a presence and like Rails there. It's as simple as coming in and you can do a couple of things, right? So you're seeing here, you can build a fully customized solution where you can build a solution into your application and we redirect your customers when different things happen. So when it's successful, we direct them back to your app. It's failed, we do the same. You don't even need to actually integrate with this in particular. You can also use our direct endpoints to be able to collect money from customers. Collecting 100 Rwandan francs from Rwanda is as easy as putting in the amount, currency, and then we do all of the complex, boring stuff, like allowing you to just now go ahead and collect mobile money payments now from customers who have an MTN Rwanda line, an Airtel line. If it was card payments you wanted, there's a way for you to collect payments from, card customers there as well. And so that's just, in a nutshell, how quick and easy it is to go from I signed up, I verified my accounts, and now I want to accept payments from XYZ jurisdiction, right? And intentionally so, because we wanted to make it like that.
This is incredible. You're not just serving your customers' needs directly to manage their own treasuries and just do the internal payments. You're giving them tools for them to engage directly with their own customers and make their life easier. So it's basically a one-stop shop for all your payment and financial needs for yourself and for your customers.
Bingo. Exactly. The most symbiotic relationships is when we help our customers make money, meaning they're monetizing from their customers. It's a match made in heaven. They love us, we love them, and not romantically, but just by nature of they're alive as a business, because they can use us to generate revenue. And we are alive because we are serving businesses like theirs, right? And that's why I really love the way that we've built out the solution, because it works just as well for your, multi-country, multi-jurisdiction, large enterprise as it would for your developer, your David Nandwa in 2020, who wanted to launch something like this, but nothing existed in this way for him to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. What you showed us here and kind of seeing it work and function, it makes so much sense what you once said in an interview you did for Magma 2, which we'll be able to share those in the very near future. You said something about, building the clearinghouse. And I remember when I saw that, I thought, what is he talking about? But now seeing it, I see exactly what it is that you meant, because it's literally that, it's all these things that are happening in the background, but then the final things get delivered where they need to get delivered. And like how you said, that ease and that comfort of knowing that it's just going to get done. You do not need to know all that, rigmarole of what exactly happens as a final end user. You just know that your thing is going to get done, and that's what matters. But now also I'm curious, because you have alluded before to the fact that building in Africa is like playing the game in hard mode. I don't get that anymore, because you did that with 14-person team. So can you elaborate on what exactly this hard mode is, and perhaps what do you think is needed to ease that into at least like a mid-range intensity, so that people are able to function a bit better, particularly founders and builders who are, like how you said, 20 David Nandwa, who wanted to build Honeycoin. And I can imagine the things you had to go through to get to this stage of functionality.
Yeah. So the reason I said that, and I still hold it true today, is if I said I'm going to start a startup in the US, I'll go to Stripe Atlas, incorporate for $300 to accept payments. I can literally vibe code Stripe elements into my app, meaning I don't even need to integrate it myself. And I'm already collecting and accepting card payments, bank payments, whatever, even stablecoin payments within the US at least, right? And so that's like the startup experience in the US. Now, if I came to Kenya and I want to launch a business, the e-business registry will take probably 2-3 months just to give me a business, right? Just like you have a tax PIN, you have a company ID. Once I go to open a bank, the bank will tell me, okay, you need to pay to open this account. That's number one. And only I'm going to charge you today, we're going to charge you every single month, right? And that's okay, as long as you at least know you're going to launch a solution and you have a bit of capital, even if you're bootstrapping. Now you have to deal with the regulators. Then you have to deal with the market risk. Today, and this happens a lot in Nigeria, regulator could come and say, hey guys, I know we accepted crypto and stablecoins, we're banning it again, right? And then now you have to resiliently think, okay, my business is dead, where am I going to go next? I should probably go to like the next market, which is Ghana, right? All of these things I say as, they sound like they're far-fetched, but it is the reality. We've seen this come into play where someone had a business model. You have Max, which was doing a lot of like the motorbikes in Nigeria. One day the transport regulator came and said, you guys, what you're doing is illegal. They had to sell off their inventory, close down shop in a days, right? For a business that's already invested so much from a capital, from like a resourcing, from like a team perspective. in to be able to like achieve what they have achieved to date, right? And so that's why I think it's just absolute hard mode, because you're gonna have to build a really, really great solution for your customers. You're gonna have to make sure that regulators like you and allow you to operate. And then you're also gonna have to make sure that there is no adverse governmental or national event that turns your business into something that's extinct. Of course, this doesn't happen in every single market on the continent. But then you also have to think about the fact that for most of West Africa, they're either French speaking or they only speak their colloquial languages. So you have to think about translation, right? You go to East Africa, you think, oh, it's pretty much the same. I can go to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. No, Tanzania has exchange controls where using USD and invoicing in dollars is illegal. I know that sounds crazy, but it is, right? So all of those things being true, not only do you have to think about how I'm deploying the solution, you have to think beyond that. How can I deploy the solution in an environment where the first bed they make for me is a bed of nails? And so I have to find a way to cushion it to the point where I can sleep on it, And, I think in a way, having explained all of that, I guess it does seem crazy why we would choose to build solutions here. I should probably go live in San Francisco and maybe Honeycoin would have been a unicorn by now. But I think it's because the mission goes beyond ease. It goes beyond, this is what I like doing. It's comfortable and it's fun, but it's also necessary, right? I don't think there would be as many independent companies if there were people who said, no, we are not going to accept colonization for any which reason, right? We are the same thing from a liberator perspective, only now we're not fighting these wars with knives and swords, we're fighting them with code, which is much better, but still incredibly more difficult than trying to build out a solution in a market like the US, UK, Europe, and the likes.
I have this image of a nail bed in my head. I cannot get rid of it anymore. But that's the starting point. That's
Yeah.
yeah. And so what is the long game here? What is the end goal with Honeycoin?
I think for us, and I alluded to this earlier, the day we become as ubiquitous as a messaging app, as how much trust people put in messaging apps to deliver a message, that is the end goal. Now, I will say this from the point of view of thinking about our investors and our backers, whether that looks like we've IPO'd, we've been acquired, we have, now we are so cash flow positive, we've already paid out dividends and all of them have realized a strong return on their kind of like capital. That is, let me just say, not insignificant, but it is not conclusive of the reality of the solution. And the reason I say that is because one of the things I've actually come to deeply realize is when you do build something that people want, that they're willing to pay for, that is scalable, meaning it doesn't take 100 Davids to sell it, the exit will come, right? So my focus is mainly in getting to that invisibility point where we are ubiquitous. It's not just product market fit. We are the stop sign on the road. We are the SMS you send to your mom. We are the, call you make knowing that the call will go through and they'll be done. That is for us the end goal. We want to become as invisible as any of the solutions I mentioned and truly be that operating system for money. Whether we are the front-facing platform that you see or we are the platform that you use and you don't know you're using them, right? I think for us, that's really the end goal. And I think if we truly achieve that, the reality is we will be valuable. We will be able to create exit scenarios for the team members who've built this company so painstakingly and the investors who've been, at least gracious enough to back us on this audacious vision and mission that we're on.
I mean, all those things you mentioned are in terms of your investors and all of that. Like, I see those are byproducts
Yes.
of achieving your mission and goal.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, scenario that happens, then, that entails. But I think what's even more fundamental of what you're talking about is changing the landscape of payments.
For sure.
And changing the landscape of making crypto assets and fiat assets and new form of banking and traditional banking just speak to each other, interoperate. I find that sort of part of the mission super inspiring. And just, last question on that thread is, with big corporations and companies now getting more into stablecoins, and funny, today stablecoins are hot. That's what a lot of policymakers as well as large institutions are talking about. How do you think about a company like yours and many other payment startups across Africa? How should they be thinking about the Visas and MasterCards and Stripes and all of that getting into the stablecoin space? What will be over commoditized that it doesn't really make sense for people to solve? And what do you think will give different startups a unique moat in a world where traditional institutions are getting involved in the stablecoin space?
I think one, you're absolutely right on everything you mentioned, which is that right now stablecoins are hot. I think the thing that I am very proud of is we've been using stablecoins to manage even our own treasury from all the way back in 2021. They're having a moment right now because everyone is like, you know what, the regulation is here. USDC and Tether are announcing and doing all of these exciting things to really push out this agenda. And it's becoming very clear that they will actually disrupt finance. But the thing I will say, and the reason that, for the hundreds of times investors have sent to me a Visa, a Coinbase, a MasterCard article, and something they're doing within crypto and stablecoins, I'll say that the larger you get, let me just say, the farther your vantage point to your actual customer. And once that vantage point is at, let me just say, so high, the only way you outcompete your customers will be that you either partner or you acquire them, you buy them out. And so I'm not so much scared that Visa will play some kind of role within stablecoins, so much so that I am confident that Honeycoin will be a partner of the likes of Visa and MasterCard, things that we're already doing in some way, shape, or form. And the other thing I'll say is a lot of the examples that we kind of like can draw parallels from is the same ethos that we have today. Google was told when they were launching, Yahoo already exists, you guys will never make it. That was maybe true when they declined the $1 billion acquisition. It's definitely not true now when they're worth trillions and Yahoo is nowhere close to that, right? Apple was told that BlackBerry has already kind of like capitulated the phone market. You probably shouldn't try and launch another phone, right? For us, we are the same thing that those solutions were in their day. We have purpose-built the product, not just on a B2B front, but for consumers, in a way that is so much closer to the things that we're hearing from our customers. And we want to do this for as long as possible. Because the more successful we get, unfortunately, the higher our vantage point, and we've then become the folks who are consistently doing M&A to be able to achieve things. God forbid. I hope we maintain that close vantage point for as long as possible. If I was to say why, XYZ competitor is only a deeper validator for a business like ours. So if I was to say why we're not so much as intimidated as them, that would kind of like be my holistic answer.
Wow. I feel like I have so many more questions, but we're going to have to, close it off now. But
Yeah, no worries.
You've hinted at a big partnership announcement for Honeycoin. Now, by the time
I
that this
have.
goes out, I feel like that would have already been announced. So, would you mind sharing a bit more on what that partnership is?
I can't give one. We are definitely working on a very deep partnership with the largest stablecoin issuer, which is Tether. It'll be announced very soon, and it's
Okay.
probably the largest partnership for us this year. So that's super exciting and very good to see Tether making deep bets on the continent. So probably by the time this is out, hopefully we've been able to announce that and all the I's are dotted, T's crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, I'm already excited for that. I think in general, just seeing now what it is that you're doing and having other people see it as well, it's kind of proof and evidence that, you are on the right
Yeah,
path. And I think whatever, homing beacon it is that you're using, the thing that inspires you to keep driving is very clearly headed in the right direction. As a storyteller, though, I do have a request that I feel like we need to see more outside of this conversation, because we cannot encapsulate
yeah,
everything about what it is that Honeycoin
everything.
is and David
That's
Nandwa
it.
is. But there is a lot there. There's a lot of richness that I think a lot of people can draw from. So
For
I
sure, yeah.
think it would be great, to be able to experience that in whatever other format it is that you decide to put it out. But thank you, for sharing. And there is a beautiful quote that you tweeted. I know I spend too much time online. I see almost everyone's tweet. But you said that to be human is to create and to love. beyond these two are to enjoy our very short time on this rock that we call home. And I think that is
Yep.
the perfect quote for us to end this particular episode on.
Couldn't have ended it any better. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end.
It's always so different also seeing people who are so techy say such words that are so, oh my gosh, these are pretty profound. But I guess
Wow.
it makes
Yeah.
so much sense as well, because what you're building isn't just about just super techy stuff. You're
Yeah.
literally solving and building clearing houses, like how you said. So I think it's very impressive.
Thank you so much. And first off, I mean, really appreciate you guys. You've been so gracious, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as me. And just thank you for everything you guys are doing to tell the story, to put builders in front of a global stage. I do not take it for granted at all, because I think, like you said, we've been, or I've been personally, in front of a computer more than I've been in front of a screen or in front of a stage. But I think this year, my priority, and something I've tried a lot with Yosef, is to tell that story, because I think there's a lot of value in telling such stories, a lot of value in telling, a story from your perspective, because there's a lot of people who are looking for a reference point, not even inspiration, or not to say, wow, this guy is super impressive, but just to say, if he did it, I can, right? Or if he's doing it, I can partner with him. And, or if this is happening, then this is something that I also think I can achieve, right? So yeah, appreciate all the work from a Magma Borderless perspective you guys are doing. And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the time.
Yeah. Any closing words you have
Thanks,
to share,
David.
Yosef?
No, just really enjoyed going through the demo and walking through the
Yeah.
product in itself and the story. And yeah, I think the narrative of being on a bed of nails and building all these different pieces, it's like, you guys are not sleeping if you're building all of this and
Yeah.
doing hundreds of millions of dollars of volume and growing really fast and taking on very different incentive structure.
Yeah.
And what you shared seems like the opposite of the hold assets for as long as possible incentive, where
Yeah.
you're actually incentivizing for velocity of movement. And that's how economies grow. That's how we develop as a continent, is when there's a lot more velocity of movement of capital between us and within us. And so it's beautiful to see, a value system that's aligned with a much larger economy and a future that we all want to be part of. So thanks for doing that.
I mean, and we'll keep doing it for as long as I can. I promise you that.
Thank you all so much for tuning into the Borderless podcast. If you haven't already, remember to follow Borderless AF on X or Twitter and Farcaster. All of our personal socials will also be in the show notes, including Honeycoin and Borderless Africa. So definitely check those out. But from us here at the Borderless podcast, from myself, from David, and from Yosef, keep building, and we'll catch you on the next one.